Okay, so tell you what, let's begin now. I think we've got quite a bit of people coming in already. So wonderful. So everybody, let's just start by waving a hi to the audience, right? Hello, guys. Welcome, everyone, for tuning in. Welcome to the Being Beings live chat on Facebook. Today, we've got a very special conversation with the retreat directors who have been conducting our online COVID-19 interfaith retreat, A Dose of Spirituality, over the last 5 weeks. We'll let them introduce themselves first, but first of all, let me start. My name is Basil. I'm one of the co-founders of Being Beings, which is an interfaith community newsletter. So many of you have been on our website right now. So I'm one of the co-founders and one of the editors for Being Beings. And I will be co-hosting today with my good friend over here, Elizabeth Teo.
Hi, everybody. My name is Elizabeth. I'm also one of the co-editors of the Being Beings Interfaith newsletter. I'm also the video editor for the newsletter. So basically the retreats that you've been seeing for the last 5 weeks, I put them together. So hope you've been enjoying them all. Okay, before we start,
I was going to say, sorry, Liz, I was going to say, Liz probably knows the retreat better than anybody here. She's watched multiple copies of the retreat teachings multiple times in order to edit them. So she might even know the teachings even better than the retreat directors themselves. So it's great to have you here, Liz. Yes, and you're about to say, sorry.
Thank you. Okay, I think before we let the retreat directors introduce themselves, just be familiar with the Facebook chat. So whenever you want to ask a question, and feel free to ask a question at any time, state your name, state the faith tradition you are from, and state your question and who it is addressed to, which of the retreat directors is addressed to, or is it addressed to everybody. So we'll have somebody monitoring the questions, and then we'll try to get to your question as soon as possible. So that's the instruction so far. Also, there are 5 retreat directors for the interfaith retreat, but Ustaz Mizi, our speaker from the Muslim faith, from the Islamic faith, is not able to be with us here today, so he sends his apologies. Okay, without further ado, let's ask our retreat directors to introduce themselves. Maybe Lance, you can go first.
Hi, welcome to this retreat, this time of being together. I'm in the tradition, and basically it's been something interesting for me to embark on. Actually, we were having just a couple of chats with Basil on doing something like this, and I'm really quite surprised at how beyond my expectations. I'm really happy to be here and to be part of this process. So thank you for allowing me to be part of this journey together with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Lance. Maybe we have Kathir.
Hi, my name is Kathirasan K. You can address me as Kadir. I am one of the co-founders of the Hindu Hub, and I represent the Hindu faith in this retreat. And I'm very glad that you are making time to be here today, and I hope to have a meaningful conversation with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathir. Maybe we have Phra Goh next. Maybe you can unmute yourself, Phra.
Okay, hi everyone. I'm Phra Goh. I'm a Buddhist monk from the Theravada Thai tradition. So currently I'm the advisor for the Buddhist Youth Network and the Singapore Polytechnic Buddhist Society, and probably going to end my tenure as a vice president of Falelai Buddhist Temple soon. Yeah, the AGM is coming. Yep.
Hey, thank you, Phra Goh. Finally, we have Master Stephen Ong. Yeah, congrats.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen. I'm a Taoist. I'm happy to share with you my faith. Also representing Singapore Cultural Society of Quanzhen. In Chinese, we say Quanzhen Jiaohua Xiehui. Yeah, I'm also under the lineage of Quanzhen Longmen Pai. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And Master Stephen,
Thank
may
you,
I just
Master
ask if you could speak a little bit louder? I think the mic is not picking up that well, your voice.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, thank you very much again for introducing yourselves. And as Liz says, Ustaz Mizi, who's representing the Islamic faith, cannot be here today. He sends his apologies. He's actually got a whole bunch of solemnizations today. So I think a lot of people are trying hard to get married after the whole circuit breaker phase. So we wish him well, right? But he says he wishes he could join us. Yes. Now,
Okay, we have our first question in from a viewer. So addressed to everybody. Hi, I'm curious. How did you all get involved in this project? The format is something new to us in Singapore.
and feel free, anyone, to go first.
Okay. Yeah, I got to know this project from Basil. So Basil approached me, and he asked me whether I'm keen to be part of this retreat to share some teachings. So basically, in the interfaith circle, this kind of sharing is very common. Yeah, but of course, most of the interfaith activities are usually closed doors. Yeah, closed door settings due to sensitivities issue. Yeah, so like most of the interfaith activities I've been, there's a lot of briefing before the dialogue or conversation, or like what to say, what not to say, rules of engagement, and so forth. Because not everybody can be respectful. So this is the realities of life. Yeah. So this thing has to be taken in a very careful approach. Yeah.
Thank you very much,
Thank you, Phra. Anybody
Yes, I
else like
noticed
to
we
add on?
even have. I noticed we even have subtitles coming up, so that's great. Every time we speak, someone's or the machine's writing this down. Before we go on to the next person, I just thought we would say hi to some of these people who have started joining. Clara, hi Clara, how are you? Tang Chi Man, how are you? Victor, Nicholas, welcome everyone. And the rest, please feel free to start saying hi, start saying,
White Kid
telling us
there
who you
too.
are, where you come from.
Hi, White Kid.
Yep. Thank you for joining us, White Kid. And anybody else, do you want to share a little bit about how you got involved? Or tell you what, why don't I add a question to it? Because I think a question I had was very similar. Basically, even the topics themselves, right? So I know there were 5 weeks of this retreat. Each week had a different topic. It was the sense of loss. There was compassion, self-care, hope, and gratitude. Why were these 5 topics chosen for this retreat? And maybe even like what struck you most amongst these 5 topics? What was the most interesting one for you guys to share?
Anybody can start first.
So for me, I felt that I think what kind of surprised me as we had our first conversation about this when I met my fellow retreat masters was that I think there's a commonality. I think the word common humanity kept coming out, like how we all felt for the people who perhaps maybe suffering or going through a difficult time during this season, and I think it was just really heartwarming to hear how everybody was listening from the heart, and perhaps we offer what can come from our own faith tradition, to reach out not just to people of our own faith, but also others who may be open and may find another way to access, right? So I felt like there was that commonality, and I think the topics that came up were almost unanimous. Like there was no argument about which topic should be in and which topic should be out, but somehow there was this flow, and the topics just sort of came up categorically quite nicely. It didn't take much. time. I think it took like
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
Lance. I
Lance.
think you may have frozen for a few seconds, but I guess we heard most of what you said. And just to chime in a bit, in part, answer to that question, how did it start? We were trying to come up with an interfaith newsletter, an interfaith community magazine. And so a few friends got together, myself, Liz, and a few others to think about what to do. And actually it was Liz, Elizabeth, who mentioned, hey, how about an interfaith retreat? It sounded like a nice idea, although it seemed like it would be a lot of work. So I started calling up a few people whom I knew who were retreat directors, but I don't know a lot of those from the other religions. I knew Lance from before, we've worked together previously. So I started asking around my Hindu friends, my Muslim friends, who are people that you consider really good spiritual teachers. And they started recommending a few names to us, and we found them. And Kathir, Stephen, Phra Goh, Lance, and Ustaz Mizi have all agreed. So that's how we actually started. But again, to go back to that other question, like how are these 5 topics chosen? I think Lance has mentioned that, but also this, which topic was most interesting to you or stood out the most for you? So thanks, Lance. How about Kathir? Would you like to share which topic was most interesting for you or what stood out?
Right. For me, among the 5 topics, my favorite, because we all gravitate towards something, for me, it's self-care. I think self-care is something that that I'm very, very interested in, because many a time we tend to neglect our well-being for the well-being of others, or even when it comes to serving others. Now that becomes a priority for us instead of serving ourselves, because we tend to think that by serving ourselves or taking care of ourselves, it could be selfishness. But however, in spirituality and in all religions, now the self is a very important agent that is involved in worship, in meditation, in reflection, contemplation, etc. Which is like, it is so implicit to the point where we tend to completely neglect it. So because it's implicit, it is good sometimes to make it explicit. So I was very happy that that all of us agreed to talk about self-care as well, because without the self, then everything else in this world, all our experiences may not be as meaningful, because it is us who is actually interpreting and experiencing every moment in our lives. So yes, self-care is what I was very interested in. I was very excited talking about that.
Thank you very much, Kathir. How about maybe one more person? What topic, maybe instead of just what was most interesting to you and what stood out, what topic was most challenging for you to talk about? Maybe from your faith perspective or even your personal capacity. Master Stephen?
Yeah. Okay, for myself, I would say compassion is a challenging topic to talk about. Yeah, actually, compassion is what we are doing daily, but at times it's very hard for us to put onto papers or even give explanation to others, whereby these are more on action, our daily mindfulness that we are doing for our daily being. So compassion is a topic whereby we really need to go into understand what are the category when we are talking about compassion. So at times that we also have to remember that during in the peace time, during crisis, these are the terms whereby you go and help one another hand in hand, such as like putting this retreat actually is also part of the compassion, whereby all the retreat directors uh, join together hand in hand to work out the program is also part of a compassion, whereby really want to reach out for everyone to understand respective religion and also their beliefs. Yeah, this is what I from my viewpoint. Another thing is because we also now we are facing this COVID-19 situation. A lot of things that we can see healthcare professional they are doing mainly are also from the part of compassion, whereby people may say that day to day is because of their job, it's because of their profession, but actually a lot of things they are doing are also partly come from compassion, which some people may never relate to lah for compassion point of view. Yeah, thank you.
You know, a question just came to my mind. All of you are retreat directors and well revered in your own religion. So how difficult was it for you to preach to a general audience that's not part of only your religion, but you know, people you know who are of different faiths will be, you know, attending your retreat and following you on your practice. So how difficult was that for each of you? Maybe Phra Goh can kick us off.
Yeah, so when I first started on the interfaith journey several years back, I need to do some digging up and research on my own scriptures, my own religious scriptures, to come in terms with the commonalities. So interestingly, when I look through the scriptures, the Buddhist meditation practices, there are 6 kinds of recollections. We call this the anusatis. So there's the mindfulness of the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, which is unique to the Buddhist. Then there's also mindfulness of generosity, this Chaganusati, which is all across the board, and mindfulness of virtue, and Silanusati, which is also quite all across the board, and eventually there's Devatanusati, mindfulness of heavenly beings. So this is applicable to atheists, monotheists, polytheists, whatever. So all these kind of meditation practices is mentioned in the Buddhist scripture, and all of them, when they practice properly, can reach enlightenment. So once we are able to come to terms with this, we call it the multiple doors to the end goal. We call 84,000 Dhamma doors, 84,000 methods. Then we can go ahead. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you, Phra Goh. I think that's very insightful to tell us that there are 84,000 doors, Dhamma doors for each of us to enter. Okay, maybe we have Lance. For you, what was challenging to preach to an audience that's not Catholic or Christian?
Maybe maybe the word is not challenging, but actually interesting is perhaps the more appropriate word for me. Maybe because of the work that I do in the area of spiritual direction, maybe it helps me to see the human person as you know, the human experience, and how God is a person that reaches out to all of us in our where we are at, right? And I think I use it as a basis for appreciating where people are coming. So, you know, notice the way the way the sessions go. I mean, I guess that's been a style that I've always adopted, even before this retreat setting. So but I find it interesting because I think we have all the other, and I found myself watching every week in the series came out. I always found myself watching the other religions just to learn more. And I think for me, I think I find it even more interesting to not so much to adapt, but I think it helps me to see how you know, as human persons, whether you're a Buddhist, whether you're a Christian, whether you're Hindu, these are labels that are not meant to divide, but actually to help us enter more deeply into who we truly are, right? Who we are as human persons, right? And this process was deeply moving for me. I mean, I learned also a lot about myself as I was inspired about, like, how to say something, and it was not so much challenging that, like, oh, I can say it this way, you know. And I think this has been interesting for me, interesting process, and I think it's also very affirming. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. How about Kathir?
All right. So for me, it was the whole idea of reaching out to people, regardless of their faith subscriptions or affiliation, is not very difficult, given that that has been my belief. Because I think there are two things that are happening when we present a practice or a teaching from a faith. Number one is what is stated in the tradition through the scriptures or texts that we honor and we cherish. That's number one. Number two is how we interpret what is presented in the text. So many of us, we tend to interpret what is in the text or scriptures in a way that we were taught, or in the way that we are practicing it. So I have made this choice, of course, by the influence of my teachers as well as my reflections, to look at faith also in a humanistic way. I think that is very important, because when we look at our faith from a humanistic perspective, we start to look at people as people. We look at people as simple human beings. All of us have chosen a faith. Maybe perhaps it's by choice, or sometimes we are given a faith, meaning that we are born into a tradition. But regardless of all of that, we are basically human beings. And looking at the human experience then it allowed myself to interpret the teachings in the Hindu scriptures and texts in a way that it can be applicable to everyone. Now, not everyone may subscribe to the doctrine of God. So there are religions that may not subscribe to an entity called Supreme God, and there are religions that subscribe to it. And some of us may subscribe to reincarnation, and some of us may not. So one interesting thing that I want to share is, because representing the Hindu faith made it a little, for me, it made it a little easier because of the pluralistic tradition that Hinduism is. Like, for example, because in Hinduism, there's always been syncretism, right? A lot of syncretism in the Hindu faith. If you were to look at in the ancient days, there was interaction between Buddhists and Hindus, and some ideas from Buddhism are also stated in the Hindu text as well. And it goes on and on till today. There is this syncretic, activity that is taking place in Hinduism. So that made it easier for me. I will not say that it is entirely something that I, what I call, created in terms of presenting the retreat practices. But in fact, I'm indebted to the tradition itself, where it has set a great tradition of syncretism. So I'm just leaning onto that and interpreting from a context of Singapore and COVID-19.
Thank you, Kathir.
Thank you very much, Kathir. I've received a note from our friends backstage that we have live viewers now at about 33 people have just joined us as live viewers. So just want to say hi to some of them. We also have one or two comments to share before we move on. So we have Master Kwantong, who's in the audience. Also, Brother Michael Broughton, who has joined us as well. Hi, Brother Mike. Ganesh also, nice to see you again, Ganesh. Nurul, as well as Ryan Ng. And a comment, there's also a comment from viewer Shiva Rai. Hi, Shiva. I'm a fan of Phra Goh's meditation sessions here in Singapore, and I have done a first one with him already. So Shiva just wanted to share that. We've got a few more questions, but I'll just pass it back to Liz first to continue.
I think we can move on to the next question if everybody's okay. So next question is from Waikit. He says, hi speakers, a general question for all. What were your sources of inspiration when leading your respective retreat sessions? Is it something you've read or someone you learned from? So maybe Master Stephen can kick us off with this one. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Mainly is from Master Kwangtong, whereby actually I'm one of his disciples, and also our tradition is Quanzhen Longmen tradition. For Taoist point of view, we tend to want to share about what we have learned to others. Yeah, basically we have to stay being objective lah. Whereby even though the preaching does not mean that it's come from the same religion, it could be from other devotees, but at least we share the some of the common things or some of the common beliefs that we have with others as well. Yeah. So for instance, I'm a Taoist. My neighbor, it could be a Christian, it could be a Hinduism, it could be a Buddhist, whereby some of the topic it could be linked to each other. Yeah. So to say, we can from this topic for such a reflection retreat, we also can understand each other better in the sense of when day to day we meet up each other as a neighbor, or even day to day we meet up each other as a colleague. We can understand each another faith in a different perspective, and also have a common understanding. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Stephen. So he gets inspiration from all his neighbors of different religions that helps him.
Yes.
So maybe I'm just going to go in a circular fashion. Phra Goh, what was your inspiration when you were preparing for the sessions?
Oh, wow, this is like a long list of gratitude, like the Oscar nomination, and you need to list everyone. Okay, so, but in short, most of the teachings I've learned before I was a monk, most of my theoretical preparations, I attended basic Buddhist courses at the Sri Lankaramaya Buddhist temple at St. Michael's Road. So that was like during my maybe secondary school and poly days. So most of my knowledge comes from there. And as a monk, there's a lot of fine tuning on the technical knowledges from the scriptures. Yeah, so that's about it.
Thank you, Phra Goh. Kathir, where do you get your inspiration from preparing for the retreat?
Right. A lot of that came from my study of Hindu scriptures. So that has been since I started learning this from my teacher in 1999, I had been very much leading a life of reflection and contemplation and study of the Hindu texts. And I would say that everything that I shared is either explicitly found in the Hindu text, or some of them have been perhaps adapted in a way that the authenticity is not lost. That's exactly what I did. Thank you.
Yeah, and for myself, I guess it's, well, I guess you can look at the bookshelf behind me. Maybe I need to thank every one of them there. I mean, I think maybe what I've learned really, it's also on my own life journey of seeking and searching. I think a lot of books have helped me, as I think they were like my first spiritual directors, right? And so there's too many authors to thank, but a lot of them who made sense. But I must thank the fact that the spirituality I practice, Ignatian spirituality, has also broadened my mind to find God in all things. And in that sense, this spirituality has also helped me to begin to see the world in frame it in a certain way. And I think a lot of the authors that write on this spirituality have given me a lot of insight and learning, and I'm still learning, in this process. So if you look at Ignatian writers writing on Ignatian spirituality would be key, but there are also many other spiritual traditions within the Catholic Church that have also informed me, like the Carmelite tradition, the centering prayer tradition, the Christian meditation tradition. There's just really many of these sources that have actually, I think, helped me to also frame what I've spoke about with the last couple of days. I didn't really refer to a particular book or so, but I think these have been a distillation of my own experiences over time, and I'm just grateful to maybe this time to have to distill it and make it concise for minutes. So thank you for this opportunity.
Okay,
Thank you, Lance.
we have
Hey, Basil.
we have a few questions right now. I'm gonna just merge two of the questions into one. There's a question from Phyllis Chu, as well as another from Jocelyn Genevieve. Actually, it's direct. Phyllis's question is directed to Kathir, and Jocelyn's question is directed to Lance, but it's almost the same question. So I'm just going to merge them, because Kathir, earlier you mentioned about self-care, and why that was such a striking topic for you to work on. And Phyllis's question is about the contrast between self-care and other care. That do you think other care is also really important, and is there a way we can move from self-care, by itself to other care? I think that's connected to the topic of compassion that you guys did as well. But related to this, Jocelyn's question is, in life we wrestle with weaknesses, but how does one move from resentment to gratitude, cursing to blessing, bitterness to graciousness? I think her question is also quite focused on other care or compassion. Would Kathir and Lance, would one of you like to take this question? Or both of you, actually, sorry.
All right, so I'll go first, Lance. Right.
Yes,
and
sure.
over to you. So, yeah, thanks. So I'm going to now respond to the question that Phyllis asked, a great question. Now, why do we, because it's about a lot about compassion towards others that religions tend to talk about, and seldom do the texts talk about oneself. Now, so I look at this from the faith tradition that I have learned. Now, in the Hindu tradition, there are two distinct traditions that actually are presented. Now, one tradition is called the popular tradition, which is relevant to everyone. And then there comes another tradition that is very, very focused and very dedicated, tradition for people who want to find meaning within oneself. So these two traditions are these two traditions are presented in the Hindu scriptures as well as the Hindu tradition. So, but because the popular tradition happens to be the one that involves worship, serving others, bringing this compassion out to others, a lot of us practice this. But one thing that could possibly happen is also what we call as, some of you may have heard of this word called compassion fatigue. Now, compassion fatigue is actually when we do a lot of action or perform actions in the service of others and continue doing that all the time. Sometimes we may completely neglect compassion towards oneself. Now, this orientation happens because we are always engaging with the external world. Worship, helping others, serving others, or even rituals usually involve the engagement of the self with the external world. Now, the second tradition of Hinduism helps to refocus this orientation by telling us that we should not forget the self that is involved in the worship, the self that is involved in the service or the meditation or rituals. Because if the self is not taken care of, there's a very high possibility that the integrity and the quality of the ritual, the quality of the meditation, the quality of the worship may be severely impacted adversely. Because, for example, a simple ritual worship that is done daily, now we take it for granted because it is to be done daily, but how many of us may possibly be engaged in it very consciously without any distraction? Maybe the day started for me in an unfortunate way. Maybe I started with an argument with a colleague. Now, when I go home and do a ritual or a prayer or a meditation, now these thoughts may linger in my mind, and it may affect the quality of the ritual. So have I done something to take care of myself? What am I going through within me? And also stretching that to another level of even looking at meaning and purpose in life. Is a question for myself would be, am I doing everything in my life, including the religious and the secular, in a way that brings meaning in my life? So that relates to the self. So I look at self-care as a subset of meaning and purpose, or sometimes popularly called eudaimonia. All right. So if you look at it from that perspective, now the self should not be neglected, because if we were to neglect the self, it impacts everything else we do, our religious duties as well as our secular duties in our life. That's how I look at it. I mean, I'm responding as quickly as I can so that I can keep it very succinct and short. Thank you. Thanks for the question, Phyllis.
Thank you, Kathir. Okay, so Lance, maybe you can take the next question. So I can repeat it. She basically says, in life we wrestle with weaknesses, but how do we move from resentment to gratitude, cursing to blessing, bitterness to graciousness? How can we move?
Yeah, and sometimes I think being human is that sometimes we taste the two ends of the spectrum, right, or two ends of the pendulum, isn't it? Like we move from one thing to the other. But I must again, well, I'd like to highlight that actually the invitation for us is to come to not one end of the pendulum or to the other, right? It's not like I move from resentment. Actually, it's not just much. How do I move? Actually, the two ends of the pendulum between resentment, right? The other end of the pendulum is I don't care, so complete indifference. So sometimes it's like, if I don't want to be resentful, I can just move to one end of the pendulum. But how do I walk the middle path, right? And I think the important thing for us is that maybe as I look at that question, the words are very strong. Like how do I move from resentment to gratitude, cursing to blessing, bitterness to graciousness? It's as if like I've hit rock bottom, right? Like resentment, right? When I don't take care of the anger and frustrations towards somebody in my life, a resentment will build up because I keep focusing on it. Right? And I would curse somebody is because maybe I have some hurts about somebody and I don't take time to actually process it, and I end up cursing, right, instead of receiving. And same thing for bitterness, right? I mean, so the point here is sometimes I need to hit the rock bottom to know that that's actually what I'm doing. That I may wake up, right, to what I really want in life. I know in a way sometimes it's a little bit like dealing with a grief, right? When we arrive at a point that I'm actually resenting, aware that I'm cursing, or I'm so bitter, right? And when I reach that depressive stage, right, and I know that when I can be aware of that, right, then I wake up, right? So that just to be aware that I'm resentful, I'm cursing, or I'm in bitterness, is the beginning of life. It's the beginning of the gift happening, the grace happening. But the problem is when I cannot name my resentment, I cannot name that I'm in bitterness, then that's the issue. So the problem is not wrestling with weaknesses. In fact, if you can wrestle, if you are aware that you are wrestling with the weakness, right, it's a good thing because it reminds me of a scripture text in Matthew. It says, "Blessed, right, are the poor in spirit, right, for you shall receive the kingdom." Right, the poor in spirit shall receive the kingdom. And to be poor in spirit means you are wrestling with weaknesses, right? And I think once you hit rock bottom, suddenly become open to God, right? When you are aware of the resentment, the gratitude, the bitterness, right? And I think that is begin the opening to graciousness, to blessing, and to gratitude. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Lance, you mentioned something very interesting about the middle path between resentment to gratitude, cursing to blessing. There's a middle path. And that reminds me of what Phra Goh said in his retreat. Every session, he talks about the two ends and the two spectrums. So Phra Goh, what's your opinion on being able to move from resentment to gratitude, cursing to blessing, bitterness to graciousness?
Okay, since Lance have taken the middle path, I won't take the middle path. Okay, like there are people who face rock bottom. You want to transform and be quite perfect yourself. There's this practice in Buddhism called the paramitas, and that means perfections. So it requires a lot of effort from a very negative or unwholesome state of mind. You want to transform to something positive, requires lots of effort. So there are different routes, just like in our education, maybe there's express stream or whatever stream, normal stream. So Buddhism also provide various kinds of pathways. There are those who wants to go for the express stream, want to sort of get liberated in this lifetime, then they require lots and lots of effort. Yeah? So there's an example the Buddha gave. He was asking his disciples, how often do you contemplate on death, mindfulness of death? That means you think, one day I will pass away, that kind of thing. So one of the disciples said, every year. And Buddha said, too slow. Another one said, every month. So too slow. Another one says every week also too slow. Another one says every day also too slow. And the model student said every breath, every in and out breath, I might pass away. So that is the model answer, that answer. So that is very tough. It requires lots of effort. And of course, there are others who aspire for another route called the Bodhisattva practice to reach Buddhahood. So that can require eons and eons, lifetime after lifetime. Yep. So these are practically there are several kind of pathways. Yep.
Thank you, Phra.
Could I chime in with something like this interplay between Lance and Phra Goh using each other's middle path, right? And even part of Kathir's answer and what Lance just shared about self-awareness as being really important. And maybe self-awareness as a path that leads towards not just self-care, but then to the care of others also. You guys all did this interfaith retreat together. There is a question from Siti Musfira. Can you share something that you feel the most interesting or relatable to you that you learned from the other spiritual directors? Some of you mentioned earlier that you were curious and watching the teachings of your fellow retreat directors. Was there anything that someone else had said that struck you, that benefited you either personally or maybe in terms of your own work, your ministry, like, oh, I should use that. There's something in my faith that is compatible to this. I'm wondering if we can go back to Lance first, since you mentioned it, and then after that, Master Stephen, if you don't mind.
I think the thing that resonates with me is the practice of the meditation. I think it goes along with this question very well because, and I think that the topic we talk about self care as well, right? I think it is being able to receive this care through meditation, and I think listening to the topics and some of the spiritual practices on meditation, like helping me to listen to my heart and not to the egoic mind, right? That wants to have its own ideas of how things should be or ought to be. But that's why we build a resentment on things, because we keep listening to our head and we keep focusing on the head. And I like listening to the fact that, how each of the tradition draws us to listen from our hearts, right? To listen to our still point, the cave of our hearts, right? And I think I find this very resonating for me as I listen to the other spiritual directors speak, right? To come back home to this place, and when I'm still in this place, the source of compassion, the source of where compassion is, the source of where hope is, the source of where gratitude is, right? It just flows out, right, when we are centered, right? And I think that for me is one of the big learnings. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. How about Master Stephen? So, which of the other retreat directors have you learned something from, or something interesting that struck you? Master Stephen, you are muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, could you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Actually, I learned something from Katia at the second episode of self-care. Yeah, so actually he also he emphasized on self-care, which is also much related to Taoism purview, whereby we always remember to be self-contented. I think like what he have just explained to us, whereby self-care is to remind ourselves, and also to have such a awareness whereby when you uh, reach out to help others, but also not to forget to take care of yourself. Yeah, mainly sometimes our focus whereby we devoted in helping others, whereby we really have the kind of compassionate, whereby helping reach out for others, for the poor, for the needy ones. But sometimes we are lack or neglected ourselves. Self-care actually more like in the sense of have sufficient rest, take time to take care of yourself. This is also things that actually in our context, a lot of us actually lack of. Yeah, it's also a part of that. It's a kind of reminder to us that when we have the duty to help others, also have to remind ourselves to take care of our own self. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Master Stephen. Kate, how about you?
All right. So for me, it has been a couple of things that I want to share. Now, the first one is the meditation by Phra Goh, as well as the pragmatism of Lance, that in which he brings his teachings, and Ustaz Mirzi's unique way of presenting Islam. And Master Stephen, I like the way that you connected ritualistic observances again to pragmatic living and also its utility. Now that was very beautiful. Now that this whole what I just shared, each one of the directors, now what they brought into this retreat, now taught me one very important commonality among all the faiths, which is, now all of us are people of the text. Now we use our text, we use our traditions to anchor ourselves, and yet we interpret the text in a way that brings happiness and well-being to all. So this constantly informs me that there is a potential of looking at our text. All of us, meaning every one of us and every religion, has this potential to look at our text in a way that it can promote well-being. So that it's a choice that we can make, and also something that we can talk more about. Now, because the differences are obvious. I always say this, it is very easy to look at differences. Even animals know that. But to look at the commonalities and the similarities among faiths would require a very, very sharp and also a very wise mind, a mind that has such an intention to bring the best out of the text. And that's exactly what I saw from all the spiritual directors in our group here. And that was very inspiring to me, and that taught me a great lesson. I'd like to thank all of you for allowing me to learn by watching all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kate. And Phra Goh, which of the other religious traditions inspired you?
Like what Kate mentioned, most of the religious scriptures, they cover quite a lot of things are very similar. So when the different speakers they present, it's actually more or less they're expressing their personality. So when I look at the different retreat videos, it's actually more like appreciating the personalities and of the different retreat directors. Of course, when we talk about the practice-wise, the last portion of the videos, I think Kate's one is very close to most of the Buddhist practices on the four Brahma Viharas, wishing the others to sort of desire, to achieve what they desire. So it's a bit like mudita, we have this practice not to, for others not to lose what they have attained. Yeah? So very similar. Yeah.
Thank you, Phra. For me, the one thing that really gets inspired and really stuck in my mind was how I saw Hinduism, Taoism, because we always take, religion. You go to the temple, you make offerings, you pray, you bow, you prostrate, you do a lot of very physical actions. But I remember and so Katia shared a lot of philosophical, theological reasonings behind what they do, but also Master Stephen. I remember him saying, the 3 sticks of incense that we put up there is to remember the 3 treasures of Taoism. So that really, really struck me. Yeah. Okay, maybe we take another question from.
Liz, may I a question? Yes. Since Ustaz Mizi isn't here, was there anything that Ustaz Mizi said that struck you deeply, as someone who was viewing these tapes many, many times? Oops.
I like Ustaz Mizi whenever he quotes scriptures. And he quotes it in Arabic. I love his chanting, and it sounds like he's singing. But I think the quote that really strikes me is, "You do not show mercy to each other, then forget about showing mercy. For God showing mercy to you."
Nice, thank you. I was going to share
quote that really struck me.
Thank you. I thought I would share as well. I think I made it known on Facebook also, like the episode that struck me the most was the fourth one, the topic of hope. And actually, there were two things. One is I'm from the same spirituality as Lan, so I've used that quite a lot in my own life. But the two things that hit me were from Master Stephen and Kathir. Master Stevens was in the Hope episode when he was relating the symbol of Taoism with the white and black colors, and how there's always a bit of black in the white and always a bit of white in the black, and how we can use that even as our notion of hope. That really struck me. I remember I was listening to this while taking a walk in the park, and while I was walking, I just started feeling a lot more positive, a lot more hopeful about my own life, about my walk in the park, about being in nature. So thank you, Master Stephen, for that one. For Kathir, it was something very unexpected that you said. Yeah, I think maybe it was the third episode on self-care, where you were talking about how if at the end of the day, at nighttime before you go to sleep, you feel like, you don't feel that great, you don't feel so positive, right? Your mood is low, then okay, tomorrow, put in something else that gives you a positive experience. Include something that actually lifts your mood up. It just sounds so simple, but it struck me so deeply because it was like, oh yeah, why am I worried that I feel sad at night when I can just instill some sort of positive behavior the next day? So it gave me a lot more authority or responsibility over my own life and even my mood. So I thought I'd share that at this time since it seemed appropriate. Just those two from Master Stephen and Kathir really hit me.
You're talking about hope. I can just chime in here. Reminds me of what Mizi said, what Ustaz Mizi said. He says, some people say don't raise your hopes up high, but I believe in the opposite. We should always raise our hopes up high. And you know why? It's not about being foolish, but you will wake up every morning a bit different. Every morning a little bit more positive, and have a little bit more optimism and positive outlook in life. So that also really struck me from Ustaz Mizi. So in same line as you just do something simple every day to raise your moods up, raise your hopes up, Ustaz Mizi basically say, don't think that raising high hopes means you're having wishful thinking. Rather, that's good because it helps you lift your spirit. So that also really struck me.
Yeah. Thank you, Liz. And just some acknowledgements again. Hi to Dasun and Man Yi and Sing B from Malaysia, as well as Colin and Yvonne, who have also just joined us. Thank you very much. And we hope if you have any questions, please ask them, or even any comments that you want to share. Also, another viewer, Nazar Fahima. Welcome, Fahima, who has come in with a comment. She says I appreciated that the retreat was focused on values which are universal and not just on religious principles. I think that was great. I think just coming up with those topics seemed to be very appropriate. Did we ask that question already at the start, Liz? Like, how were these topics chosen? No? Maybe you want to try? Really. Let's suggest this?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, how were these topics chosen? Why did you choose and why did you suggest these things, right? From loss, self-care, compassion,
and hope, and gratitude.
Yep.
Maybe Master Stephen, can you start us off?
Yeah.
So how did we come up with these 5 topics?
I remember because we was much related to this COVID-19. So whereby everyone being stay at home, stay at home to be safe, not be so called to mix around with others, whereby we are staying outside. So we are thinking, what are the what we can do, in under our faith perspective, and also what are the spiritual practice or spiritual guidance we can do while we are at home, which is why we come up with all these topic. I remember I came up with compassion. Yeah, anxiety is also part of most of our citizen or even the devotees are facing. You see, of this situation whereby we are in this COVID-19, whereby in this circuit breaker period. Yeah, this is based on my viewpoint lah. Thank you.
Thank you, Master Stephen. And I remember, Master Stephen saying during the first episode, really, how COVID-19 has caused us to all be stuck at home, and places of worship are all closed. So what can we do to keep faith in our religion, even though places of worship are closed? And that's why we came up with this idea of an interfaith retreat.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
maybe anybody else want to answer this question? Maybe Kathir?
Right. I remember, I need to acknowledge that, for me, I think it is the intention that Basil shared. I think that's the leadership that made all of this happen. And right after he spoke to me about this intention, I thought it was a great idea. And I told him that I would love to be part of this because the intention is really, really great. And then when we gathered together, I think all of us brainstormed of values that are perhaps very, very helpful and traits that can be very helpful in this period of COVID-19 and the circuit breaker. And I believe that in that discussion, Liz and Basil, I think your leadership really helped the five of us to come up with great ideas to brainstorm. And then all of us agreed that these should be the values that we should bring out during the retreat. So I need to acknowledge the leadership of both of you, Liz and Basil, for guiding all of us to get there, although it was a team effort. But I think your leadership certainly helped me to contribute in that session. So I think without that session, the whole retreat would not have taken place. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathir. That was very sweet.
Thank you, Kathir. Yeah, that was very sweet. I think I remember during that meeting, the very first meeting, we got all the retreat directors together and we're brainstorming on topics. You know how the retreat directors planned it based on the needs they thought or they saw on the ground. So they wanted the first episode to be on loss, on anxiety, on fear, because that was the reality of the people they were hearing on the ground, that they were feeling very anxious about the virus. They're locked up at home. They don't know what to do. They lose a lot of their identity. They're no longer the breadwinners at home. They've lost their job. They have to take care of their elderly parents, take care of their children, and everybody is stuck at home. So that environment of anxiety and loss and disintegration was where they wanted to start with. And then remember, everybody wanted to talk about compassion. And then Kathir went, but before we talk about compassion towards other people, we need to about it for ourselves. I think very much like the airplane analogy, when there's a crisis, you put on the oxygen mask for your child, for yourself first, before you put it on for your child. So how, Kathir suggested that no, before we talk about compassion for others, we need to talk about compassion towards yourself and self-care. And then we moved on to, okay, circuit breaker is going to end. And the thing that we need exiting the circuit breaker was hope for the future. And after hope, now how do we live continually in gratitude for this new normal that we are going to be in? So it was planned with the date that each retreat session was supposed to be launched, and how is it in relation to the realities they were hearing on the ground and what they think the people on the ground need. Anybody else wants to add in? I have this question here. Somebody is asking, Kathir, you always start with Namaste and you end with Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. What does that really mean? Is that something special in Hinduism?
Okay. So I think the word namaste is a little overused because you even find that in yoga studios and yoga sessions, everyone uses it. I think in America, it has become probably part of their colloquial, vocabulary. But the word namaste, it is a very, the word appears in the Veda, which is considered to be the authority, just like how the Bible is to the Christian or the Quran to the Muslims, the Veda is to the Hindus. So in the Veda, the word namaste appears. The word namaste means me saluting the being in you, or the person that is in front of me. All right, that is called namaste. Namaha. Namaha means it's a salutation of respect, of also honor as well. So the word namaste means I salute you. But there is also an implicit meaning in the word namaste, because namaste is usually used in the Veda for gods, all right, the gods or God that is used. But Hindus use this word namaste because we believe that there is godliness, or there is God in every person. So when we say namaste, we are acknowledging and recognizing the divinity, the what do you call, the holiness, the godliness that is in everyone. It's either in a potential form, or perhaps it has manifested, all right, for each being. But regardless of that, we recognize that when we use the word namaste. Then the last verse that I usually chant before I end, which is Om Shanti 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 Hi, which is basically 3 times. We say Om is a mantra that we use because Om is itself the word of God. As we say, the word that describes God, the word that makes us understand the nature of God. That is Om in Hinduism. Now, the word Shanti means peace. And why do we say it 3 times? Because the three Shanti that we say, the 3 times the peace, is extended to 3 important spheres. The first one is oneself. Again, self-care, as I said, is called, in Sanskrit, it is called adhyatmika. That means it is the self. Now, we want peace within oneself. So the first Shanti is oneself. The second Shanti goes to the environment. The environment that we live in is called Adi Bhautika in Sanskrit. Means that the beings around us. All right. So there are lots of people, including people, the sentient beings, the insentient beings, the trees, the animals. Now all of them, as well as nature. Now may there be peace in the environment, including people. That is the second Shanti, or peace. The third Shanti, it is called Adi Daivika. Adi Daivika. That is the unseen things that could be influencing our lives. We call it sometimes the invisible hand. All right. So there are things, there are forces beyond the range of the 5 sensory organs that can actually influence our life. A good example is, for example, COVID-19. Now, COVID-19 is something, it's invisible. We don't see it. I mean, in the sense that it's unprecedented. All right. Even catastrophes like the tsunami or earthquakes are considered to be part of these unseen forces. So the third Shanti is extended to that unseen sphere that can influence and can also disrupt our life. So these 3 Shantis covers the whole sphere of a human life, which is myself, and then the people and the beings around me in the environment, and largely the unseen things that could actually interfere in my conduct of my daily life. So that's why we say 3 Shantis, or three times the word peace.
Thank you very much.
And that really reminds me of another thing I see a lot on the retreat is Master Stephen and your bowing. Is there a spiritual or religious reason for you bowing to, I believe, the viewers?
Okay. Bowing. Okay. Firstly, bowing actually is also show a respect to our God, and also showing respect to the followers, or anyone that to you is a junior or senior. It's a kind of how to say kind of protocol, in a sense, protocol whereby showing hello, saying, for us, in our context, we are saying hello or hi. But actually, if you go into any shrine, or in Chinese we say 道观, or even if you step into temples, whenever you see any priest, you can use such a formality to say to show the respect to the priest as well. And in returns, the priest will also bow back to you to acknowledge the respect that you have given to him. Actually, respect is come in two ways. So it have to be so to say as an exchange. Yes. Yeah. And I think we also emphasize that the left hand have to be covered the right hand. Okay. In Tao Te Ching we say 以善报恶. Yeah. So to say everything we have to the left hand is actually our 善手. Yeah, our compassion hand, so to say. So whatever we do, we will kind of formalistic to show respect to each other. Even lighting a joystick or even offering an incense, we will be using the left hand as well. Thank you.
Oh, so
Yes.
the left hand is the hand of compassion, and if I understand the 以善报恶, use the hand of compassion to cover the hand of evil.
Yes, I remember.
And so you wish compassion towards everybody.
Yes. I remember in episode 5, we are talking about gratitudes. So I went to read up on Tao Te Ching. So it's as a revision. So in Tao Te Ching, we also mentioned about even the one that is oppositing you. Sometimes, when we are at the workplace, sometimes your colleagues may say, hey, things that you is oppositing you, whereby doesn't share the same consensus as you lah. So to say, so even such circumstances, we also have to be kind to them. Sometimes we also remind ourselves, we be kind-hearted to those are being kind, but also not to forget being kind to those that is it could be ungrateful, it could be your enemies, it could be someone that is oppositing you. You also have to share the kind to others. You see, because when we in Taoism point of view, kind is san. Is doesn't mean that there is no bias in a sense, no bias, 没有偏私的. So to say, even kind have to share with everyone, showing kind to everyone, even to the human beings, even to the animals. Yeah, to all the beings as well. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Master.
So am I hearing you right that there is? Thank you, Master Stephen. Just take it a little bit further. Am I hearing you right that the bowing, the left hand over the right hand, the incense, they're all signs of respect and not exactly signs of worship. So it's okay for anybody of any religion to bow to a Taoist priest to give respect to them.
Surely. But definitely, let's say they doesn't understand the tradition. There is no how should I say? Let's say for Hinduism, let's say a Hindu priest met the Taoist priest. Even they don't bow to us, even they wave their hand, even they are using their hand to shake with us, it's accepted. It's accepted because we have to relate back to our current context. Yeah, because we always remember this. We have to respect each other religion. Even sometimes we meet this Hinduism Hindu priests. Even they they clap their hand, showing respect to us. We also have to accept. You see, it's a respect lah. It's a respect to each other. It's just that different context. But even shaking of hand, even waving to you, hand wave to you, say hi, is also it's a respect lah. It's a respect, and also it's a being friendly to you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Master Stephen. Basil, I think you have a question.
Yeah, we have a question from Phra Goh, for Phra Goh, sorry. But before that, just a hello, Ibnur has come into the chat as well as Sharani Hassan. So welcome to both of you. And another lady, Veera Yogi, has also come in with a comment saying, thank you, great session, guys. Thank you very much. So this question is specifically for Phra Goh. It's about episode 5, actually. And since episode 5, sorry, it's about episode 4 on the sense of hope. Hope sounds a lot like a desire, but within Buddhism, there seems to be a notion of not falling too much prey to your desires. So how do you align those two those two concepts together? With Buddhism discouraging desires, but then the sense of hope seeming like a desire as well. I think you touched on that on your episode 4 teaching, but maybe you want to expound a bit more.
Yeah, very good question on the desire aspect, because there's a lot of misunderstanding due to translation issues. The desire in Buddhism that causes suffering is defined as three things. This greed, clinging for sensuality, or this hatred, and the last one is delusion. Three kinds of desire. So the Pali is kama tanha, bhava tanha, and vibhava tanha. So these are the three kinds of desire that is negative. Of course, we have many kinds of other desires. Some of them might be positive. So the positive ones, like making aspirations, you want to be a better person, nothing wrong with that. In fact, it is encouraged. So when a person has hope, in a positive sense, that is definitely encouraged. We aspire to be a better person, to give up our bad habits and so on. So of course we have the other kind of hope, which is if it's negative, rooted on unwholesome intent or unwholesome roots, then of course that is discouraged.
Yeah, I have a question here from Sel. Thank you, Phra Goh. He asks, I'm very surprised to find that there are retreat directors here from the Taoist and Hindu faiths in Singapore. I'm curious, and if I'm keen to go for more retreats for each faith after COVID, where can I go and find out more information? So maybe Kathir, you can take this question first.
So unfortunately, the practice of having retreats in Singapore is not popular. So there are, I think, as much as I know, I could be wrong, but there are no retreat opportunities for Hindus in Singapore at this point in time. Most of them happen to be in India. So many people from Singapore, they normally go to India to attend retreats. In Singapore, we don't have that opportunity at this point in time.
Thank you, Kathir. How about Master Stephen? Is there any opportunities to go to listen to like Taoist retreats?
Okay, from what I know of, in this in Singapore, there's a shrine, a temple whereby the name of San Qing Gong. San Qing Gong do conduct lesson, spiritual practices, even some of the seminar, some of the seminar about Tao Te Ching. If those devotees would like to get some more understanding on the particular faith, such as Taoist faith, maybe you can approach San Qing Gong. San Qing Gong is also under the Taoist Federation. Yeah, under Singapore Taoist Federation. Okay, you're talking about interfaith wise, will be you can subscribe this under the YouTube, will be the Beings, and also under this CDC. Another platform is CDC, whereby Central District something. I forgotten what is the
Southeast CDC, Central CDC.
Yes, correct. Yes, Southeast CDC, whereby the topic is under common sense and common spaces. Something like that. So whereby they will invite some of the religious speaker to come on stage to share their faith, and also what are the things that is much more connected with other faith. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Basil, do you want to introduce some of the interfaith platforms that are available for people, for viewers? In addition, obviously, Beings newsletter.
Oh, sure. So there's Beings, our online community newsletter for the interfaith scene here in Singapore. We've got YouTube channels, the Facebook channel, as well as if you want written articles, or even you can watch our videos on the website. You've got Explorations into Faith, who organizes some events now and then. You've got this common senses and common spaces that Master Stephen just mentioned, as well as not to forget, of course, the IRO, the interreligious organization in Singapore, which organizes a lot of stuff. There's also a company that I'm connected to, If Then How, that conducts training for interreligious dialogue and various actual dialogue events or community building via the lens of interfaith. And while we are saying that, I think we've got a few comments related to this. One comes from our viewer, Ganesh Kalyanam, who says maybe it's time we organize more retreats, right, to help people out in their spiritual improvement, their spiritual transformation in life. Another comment from Nazaf Fahima, who's from the IRO and also Hash Peace, which conducts quite a few religious as well as interreligious events. Interestingly, this feature of, she's talking about what Master Stephen just mentioned. Interestingly, this feature of hands, using our hands to show respect, within some Muslim communities as well, there's a hand gesture of salam, which is very similar to this. And I think I'll also two more, Yong Hui and Pathma has just joined us. Now, to continue with the question that Liz just asked and Master Stephen and Kathir have just answered, Clarice asked a similar question. She says, I appreciate Sal's question on how we can continue this interfaith journey after COVID-19. Our lockdown has pushed us online. Will there be a possibility of an online space or even a physical space where we can continue this learning? I know for Being Beings, we'll continue to try to look into various projects or platforms in which we can tap into our religious diversity here in Singapore to help us at the level of individual and society. But what about these physical spaces where we can continue these learnings if we want to, whether it's just the spiritual depth and improvement or the interfaith exposure, maybe focusing on spirituality and retreats. The other three, Phra Goh, Lance, and Phra Goh and Lance, would you guys like to chime in? Where can people go towards? Maybe Phra.
Yeah.
I'm currently having an online guided meditation. This is a booking system because of the COVID-19. I used to have a physical class, but because of the pandemic, so I changed it to online. So it's more like an appointment system. So basically, I'll just give more or less the same instructions, meditation instructions to whoever. Yeah? So depending on the crowd, they fill up the Google forms. So I know what kind of religion they are, so I can give the appropriate instructions. And so I'm more interested in uplifting the spirituality. I'm not interested in sort of conversion. Yeah, so this is that's more or less about it. Of course, there are many other platforms. I think Basil has shared. Maybe Lance can share too.
Wait, sorry, just Phra Goh, just go back. You shared meditation practices that's available to all religions. Am I hearing you right?
I used to have a meditation course. Yeah, then it's open to public, so anybody can join. Yeah, so currently,
now online.
Yeah, currently now it's a online booking system, so it's just on my Facebook page. Just drop me a message. That's it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Phra Goh. Lance, over to you.
I think in the Catholic tradition, we have a lot of retreats. So actually, if you Google retreat Singapore, you'll probably find, but there are a few key retreat centers, physical places that you can go. The Senecal Sisters have their place. You just type Senecal Sisters, CENACLE. You have Life Springs in Singapore. You have Kingsmead Center, the Jesuits run that. You have the Franciscan Retreat House. So there are many of these places that actually run Catholic retreats in Singapore, each offering different flavors. In fact, they've all got their own programs. So if you access their websites, you will find them. Unfortunately, I don't have the URLs with me right now, but I think if you do Google, then you will find it. In fact, you look at the Catholic directory, there are quite a few retreat houses offering retreats. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Thank
Phra
you,
Goh
Lance.
and Lance. We've got another question that just came in. Maybe take that one first, Liz, before we end off with our final question. This is from Serene Keen. She
Okay.
says, hi, I'm curious to hear about how different faiths see people who retreat from society to pursue spiritual growth. Sometimes it's also a lifetime choice. What is the meaning of such practice in life? So I suspect she's talking more about like maybe the monastic life or living in a cloister or becoming a monk like yourself, Phra Goh, or just anyone who's just moving away from outside society into a deeper sense of spirituality. Would maybe one or two persons like to share? Maybe if I can ask you if you are prepared for this question, like you want to raise your hands? Okay, Phra
Yeah,
Goh.
Phra Goh.
Yeah, so actually this monastic practice is a pre-Buddhist practice. Yeah, so in India, there's this group of people called the Shramanas. Yeah, so these are the people who want to go to the forest, to the caves, to find the meaning of life or find God or whatever religious reasons. So they go to have a retreat, they meditate or whatever practices they do to find the answer. So basically for Buddhism, the Buddha followed this path. Yeah, so when we get to know about Buddhism, there are various options. There are the layperson option. That means as a lay devotee, a person still can practice. But for a monk, like for myself, I'm not so multitasking. I cannot handle maybe making money and earning a livelihood while trying to develop spirituality. So it's probably very difficult. Yeah, it's like trying to handle greed, secular greed on one hand, and trying to focus on spirituality. So there are, we call it their options, kind of vocation for people to commit full time to invest or to research into spirituality, certain depth, yeah, before you take on more responsibilities. It's not that a person go for a retreat to become a monk, they totally don't do anything, just meditate the whole day. That's not true. Yeah, so there are duties within the monastics in the monastery. Yeah, they are we still have to study, still have to manage the store, the store IC, admin, and so on. Yeah, so there are many roles, very similar to circular life, because as long as we are living in a world where full of people, we need to handle people relations and etc. Yeah.
Thank you, Phra Goh. And I think, Kathir, in the Hindu tradition, there are ascetics also, right, who go out into the desert, go out into lonely places to be by themselves. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yep. So the Hindu tradition also has the two traditions that I mentioned about just in this session as well earlier. And we call it Pravritti Dharma and then Nivritti Dharma. So there are two dharmas. Dharma here means, in this context, dharma here means lifestyles, all right? So there are two lifestyles that are recommended to Hindus. The first lifestyle is called the popular lifestyle. This is basically the majority. 99.99% belong to the first lifestyle called Pravritti Dharma, which involves in a life of action where we primarily live our lives ethically. I'm talking about spiritual ethics based on the Hindu teachings, seeking securities or wealth as well as enjoyments. So enjoyments and the seeking of enjoyment as well as wealth and security are completely sanctioned by the Hindu faith, and it belongs to the first lifestyle. And then comes a second lifestyle called Nivritti Dharma, which I just shared, which is an exceptional lifestyle for people who have developed dispassion towards enjoyments and wealth seeking. So people who find themselves to be someone who could not, very keyword is a disposition, in Sanskrit called swabhava, meaning that by their disposition they find aversion towards enjoyment as well as seeking wealth. Then they can choose to adopt the second path, but with the permission and acceptance of another person in that path. Now this is very important. Another person in the second path, Nivritti Dharma, should be able to initiate this person by doing prior assessment and evaluation, whether they are prepared. Or sometimes this disposition of aversion towards wealth seeking and enjoyment could be something very temporary. So it needs to be assessed and evaluated, and then they are initiated into a life of a monk or a nun. All right, these are the people who are called themselves Swami or Swamini. So these two traditions are in Hinduism, to what you call to empower people in based on their dispositions.
Thank you, Kathir. Okay, I'm just very conscious that we've just run out of time, so I'm just going to offer a last question for everybody. So if there is one takeaway you can wish for all retreatants or everybody who's watching this program right now, what is that one takeaway you want them to take away with? Maybe Lance can start.
Yeah, maybe I'll just go back to that question, right? That was asked earlier about, how do you move from one to gratitude and things like that. And I think it's just the one of the key takeaways is just really taking time to be aware, taking time to be aware of whatever is happening. If you are human, you can experience life, be aware of it, right? In a way, I like the quote, maybe the quote that a spiritual master, a Jesuit spiritual master has shared. He says, we're not spiritual, we're not human beings, right, having a spiritual experience, right? We are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so all human experiences are valid. The key thing is, can we stay awake and aware to these experiences? Because this is our way of being aware of God, right? It helps us to keep our awareness towards how God is touching us and affecting us in our lives, right? It's through our human experience. Can we wake up to this awareness, right? So I think the spiritual practices that we have shared in this retreat helps us to stay awake, even to the suffering, right? That helps us to become aware of what's happening and also open and aware of what God is doing in my life. Because God only gives and blesses us with good things. And how does God want to bless us? And so that we can grow and give goodness to the people around us through compassion, through hope, through gratitude. And so thank you for listening and for being part of this journey. Thank you.
Thank you, Lance. Master Stephen, if you had one takeaway that you want audience members to take home with them, what would it be?
Okay, the takeaway point, I would say the fundamental of Taoist on three treasures: compassion, fragility, and humility. I think in a few episodes, I do emphasize on this. Actually, it's an action and it's a thoughts that we must have in our daily living. Okay, such as compassion. You see, for instance, today maybe my meal I doesn't want to consume any meat. I will go for vegetarian. I don't want to so-called to do anything with killing. You see, helping others. You see, helping others, or by reaching out to the community, helping the poor is also part of compassion. Fragility. If talking about fragility, let's say now we are at home. Yeah, we're at home. So, for instance, whenever we doesn't need to spend a certain sum of money, so maybe you can put aside to save it separately, in the sense whereby is we are exercising our fragility. We can think, we can uh, we can foresee what are the things that we should spend, or what are the things that we shouldn't spend, in terms of for instances, for COVID-19 situation. You see, we should spare a thought to ourselves or even to our loved ones, how much we have to do some control in our spending. We shouldn't overspend, or we should have the sum of money and spend it wisely. Yeah. So talking about humanity, so it's also part of our daily living, our lifestyle. So when we meet our neighbors, being making friends with them, sharing your food, sharing what you cook for today with your neighbors. It's also firstly building the connection, and also remember that uh, apart from taking care of yourself, you also have to take care of your neighbors when in terms of crisis, or in terms of any unfavorable situation, people may also think of you and showing gratefulness to you, whereby able to help you. But always remember that when we reach out to help others, always remember that we doesn't looking for anything in returns. This is a main priority that we should have in the mindfulness in our mind. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Master Stephen. Okay, we have Phra Goh. What is one advice you want to give, one takeaway you want everybody to leave with?
After all the retreat sessions from all the videos, we have arsenal of choices, arsenal of practices. So the whole idea is every moment, try to keep the mind wholesome and positive as possible. Keep on generating positive thoughts. In meditation or practice, it's not just about 5 minutes or 10 minutes or just sitting down there and maybe sit in an Instagrammable yoga pose or full lotus position, but then the mind is daydreaming or sleeping or thinking negative thoughts. It's not about that. It's about handling the thoughts every moment. Try to keep them positive. If there's anything unpleasant or unwholesome that arises, then we can troubleshoot and try to rectify it as much as possible.
Thank you, Phra. And last but not least, Kathir, what's that one takeaway?
Right. So I would say I want to share with what I've learned from this particular verse from the Rig Veda, which says, "Let noble thoughts come from all directions." Now, I think that I'm very fortunate to have been born in Singapore, and Singapore is a very special country for the fact that we are having this interfaith retreat, right? Because we can learn from different religions without losing our identity. Now, that's the beauty that Singapore offers to everyone. And I think I have benefited from that because I grew up with people from different faiths. I spent my friends from different faiths, and till today I work as well as mingle with people from different faiths. It's a gift that we have in Singapore. So Singapore has this being a Singaporean and living in Singapore, we are all given this gift of experience from being able to understand and also observe and see how others practice their religion. And by doing that, we can learn so much from every religion without losing our identity, our religious identity. We can even learn from people who do not have a religion, perhaps the humanists. So this opportunity is something that is unique, that is given to all of us. And I would like to encourage every one of you to learn the best of what every religion can offer us. And with that, not only do we become a better person, it can also make us we can also help us to deepen our spirituality. And I think that is something great that all of us have within our reach. And it's very important that we, capitalize on this great offering and gift that we have as Singaporeans and residents of this country.
Thank you, Kathir. Okay, Basil, to you.
Okay, thank you, Liz. I think last few comments before we end off. This is from Siti. She says, the closure of places of worship definitely affected the lives of the believers. Our Mufti reminds us that our relationship with God does not end, nor will it weaken simply because we cannot go to the mosque. I think this can be applied to all faiths as well. Yes, I think that's really true. Thank you very much for the comment, Siti. Again, to reiterate from Ganesh, maybe it's time we organize more retreats. And finally, this is from Precious Gem, who also gives a comment. Thank you for coming up with this initiative, interfaith sharing with regard to one's practice of spirituality. It's interesting to find out, coming from different faiths, how we could look at COVID-19 from one's spirituality. So thank you very much, Precious Gem. Now, before I end off, just now, in answering Clarissa's question, I think I was unprepared for it when Liz had passed it to me in terms of naming out a few interfaith organizations in case you want to raise your own awareness of what goes on within interreligious dialogue. So I quickly tried to scribble them down off the top of my head. So for all those interested, if this is your first time or you're new to interfaith dialogue, do check out Common Sense for Common Spaces by, I think this is Southeast CDC, Explorations into Faith. Then not to forget If Then How at Common Ground, and Common Ground are the people helping us with this setup as well, with Being Beings and the technology side of this. The Interreligious Organization, who is also expanding their youth circle right now. So if you're under the age of 35, do look into the IRO youth circle. Of course, the IYC, Interfaith Youth Circle, that organizes scriptural reasoning about once a month, I believe. It's a very good platform, a good system there. And SIFU, the Center for Interfaith Understanding, which organizes a lot of the intellectual theoretical side of interreligious dialogue, if you're interested in that. Also, not to forget a mainstay here in Singapore, the Harmony Center, which does a lot of work in interfaith dialogue. Do check them out. And finally, for Being Beings again, if you like this, do subscribe to our Being Beings newsletter. That's on the website beingbeings.com. So go there, please subscribe to the newsletter. We send it out twice a month. Also, we have the Being Beings YouTube channel. Do subscribe there so you get the latest videos that we come up with. And also our Facebook page, if you want to interact with us a bit more, not just videos, we post up some of our articles there as well. So the Being Beings Facebook page, do follow us, like the page and follow us there. So thank you very much. I pass you back to Liz to round us off.
Okay, so thank you everybody for asking all your questions and making this such a fruitful discussion. So we've come to the end of our time, and I think I'm going to invite Kathir to bless us with your Sanskrit blessing again.
Yeah, sure. I'll be very happy to do that. All right. I'm going to chant a very simple prayer that it literally means may every being in this universe be happy and comfortable. All right. That's what we're going to do very quickly. Om Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu. Loka Samastha Sukhino Bhavantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you everybody. Yeah, learn new things.
Oops. So for all those who joined us, thank you, viewers. Thank you, everyone, for participating. How about a wave to all those who are still viewing us? Thank you, guys, and we look forward to doing more interfaith dialogue and raising the awareness of such a good endeavor here in Singapore. And to our retreat directors, thank you very much for saying yes, for agreeing to do this. I know it's hard work and it's a very rare opportunity to do an interfaith retreat, and even more rare to do an interfaith retreat online. So again, Kathir, Phra Goh, Master Stephen and Lance, and of course, Ustaz Mizi, who's not here today. Thank you very much, all of you, on behalf of Being Beings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.